So, Club Q Colorado shooting attack was ended by dad and drag performer. So, a father and a drag performer managed to subdue a gunman who opened fire at an LGBTQ nightclub in the U.S. state of Colorado. It has emerged the attacker killed 5 people and left 17 others injured at Club Q in Colorado Springs. Officials named the heroes who halted the attack as Richard Fierro and Thomas James without detailing their actions. Mr. Fierro provided his account of events, saying he tackled the suspect, took the weapon, and hit him with it. It's not clear if Mr. James is the drag performer. Mr. Fierro says then stepped in to help. At a Monday afternoon press conference, police identified the victims, and that's, of course, horrific. The suspect is 22-year-old Anderson Lee Eldridge, is in police custody. But after all of this, there was some disputed information that was coming out. Everybody was trying to rush what the motive of the suspect was. Everybody was trying to figure out what his background was, what might have led him to this attack. Based on what we can see right now, it's just problematic upbringing and mental illness. And this is the contributing factor.
Which is funny because it seems to be a very common thread among most of the high-profile, shooters that we see in a lot of these cases. Everywhere from the Uvalde shooter had serious mental illness. The shooter in Florida, in Parkland, he had mental health. He had father issues, broken home issues, mental health issues. A lot of these just are all very similar. It's crazy. But they basically they can't stand. The left is basically they love standing on the graves of the dead. It's it's what Ben Shapiro said about Piers Morgan, but it applies to pretty much everyone. They can't even wait until the bodies have been
cold in the ground yet.
They're already standing on top of the corpses and shouting we should do something for them.
Support our narrative, or else you are supporting this violence, and that's exactly what they went with. We're gonna quickly talk about this dad. So Aaron Franklin Brink, 51, began entering into a mixed martial arts cage in late 1998. Over the next 10 years, he had 21 victories, yada yada. He's also said to have divorced Aldridge's mom when their son was a baby, then took up porn acting at age 27 under the name Dick Delaware. Lovely.
That's the most clever you could come up with. Wow.
Yep. So that's just lovely.
So this kid comes from a very dysfunctional home, basically.
Yep. No kidding. And he had previous incidents in which I believe it was in 2021. He had an incident where he threatened to blow up his mother with a homemade bomb.
Wow.
And he was charged with kidnapping. But then the charges were dropped and the files were nearly sealed. And it's like, what? How did this guy get a gun? Clearly it wasn't legal. So how did he get it?
Well, the thing I always find amazing is that the left always the solutions that the left offers are always they never solve the problem, but they always increase their power. That's the big switcheroo that they give, right? They give you fast and easy solutions that sound good, but in reality are only going to cause more harm than good. And this is like a good example. If you talk about okay, we need to have laws that are better at keeping guns out of the hands of bad guys. I'm like, well, why didn't the laws stop that here? I mean, this guy sounds like a very reasonable example of a person that should not be able to own a gun. How come the gun laws didn't actually stop that? So
100%.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where what you need to do, you don't need more gun laws. You need better gun laws.
Yep.
I think that would be a good way to put it. Be like if this guy had a criminal record or some seriously troubled past, maybe we need to kind of look into are our gun laws actually properly screening for these kind of things? And do we need to change them in order to make that better? But no. The problem here is that the problem here is this kind of man and the kind of society that creates him,
Yep.
right? So if you're a reasonable person, if you were a normal, run-of-the-mill, work 9 to 5, hardworking person, you're presented with a story about, and let's just be honest about it. This is a gay nightclub
Yep.
in Colorado, and some crazy person ran in there and shot up a whole bunch of people. What if you were told that? What would you think? You know, you'd be like, okay, the problem is that crazy, stupid gunman, right?
Yep.
That's the issue. Like, who is this person? And like, why are they going in there and shooting and all that? And how can we avoid it? But unfortunately, as a lot of people have pointed out, that is not what the lunatic leftists
Yep.
have done. What they do is they always take a tragedy and turn it into an opportunity. And
Yep.
this is why it's really, really despicable, because they're distorting the true tragedy and twisting it into a distorted, like, a call to act against their opponents. And
Yep.
this is where the whole story really, really goes off the rails.
Yep. Okay,
Right.
so from the Mary Sue, which is a source we've never used before for a very good reason. The extreme right is fully victim blaming the Club Q murder victims.
Mm-hmm.
Over the weekend, our Brittany Nupper wrote about the horrific mass shooting at Club Q, pointing out that this was a natural end result of the far right's campaign against queer and trans people.
Sure.
This is what they
sure it is.
want, she wrote. Violence is what they want. They want to control us and force us back into closets, back into the conversion camps. They want their base agitated and us afraid. Which the right-wing media and far-right personalities have essentially replied, yes. The reaction from the extreme right, which encompasses everything from Fox News to certain Republican politicians who profess online white supremacists, to a professional online white supremacist, in the wake of soothing the left 5 dead, has been monstrous. They haven't just deflecting, they've been crafting narratives to fully blame the club and the victims for the fatal violence in what was supposed to be a safe, loving, joyous space. The absolutely abhorrent YouTuber Tim Pool has accused the club of hosting a grooming event, which is true.
They were.
Presumably because they recently advertised an upcoming drag brunch. As a reminder, drag, like the very existence of LGBTQ people, is not inherently sexual. Yes, it is.
Says you.
Yep.
My
It's only
gosh.
right-wing weirdos like Pool who think that. Tim Pool is
No,
not a
it's
right-winger.
no. This is what they do. This is a good example of a left-wing publication where
Yep.
it's gaslighting. It's gaslighting. Gaslight. By the way, you're naked. Yes, I am. It's illegal to be naked. Oh, I'm not actually naked. You just think I'm naked. I'm like, no, you're actually not wearing anything. Well, it doesn't count as being naked. It's like they want you not to believe what is right in front of your eyes. This is how like this is why it's so difficult to have any actual respect for the people who write these things, because
Yep.
they're so blatant in their lies. It's pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, and of
Yeah.
course, like, all Tim Pool says, we shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. Club Q at a grooming event. How do we prevent the violence and stop the grooming? Which is a totally valid claim, a totally valid statement. Like, this event should not be happening. And, of course, the place shouldn't get shut up. Now, I understand some of the anger against a place like this, because we try and protect the children. We try and make sure that these individuals do not have access to the next upcoming generations. We're like, hey, the law should step in. These people should not be allowed to access children. These people are pedophiles. That's what they are. I'm not advocating to shoot them. I'm not advocating to harm them in any way, but the law should be dealing with them. And if the law will not act on these weirdos, if they will not act on these freaks, then some people will see it as their only outlet to resort to violence. We're not encouraging that, but it is a natural outcome when people see justice not being served.
Well, and I think that there's like two major fallacies going on here. One is that it is a non sequitur fallacy. For example, we can say we don't think drag shows for children should be allowed. That does not, like, us saying that drag shows should not be allowed does not automatically lead to mass shootings in clubs.
Yep.
One, there's no connection between the two. And if they're going to make a connection like this, they have to prove the connection.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're assuming that one led to the other without any actual evidence that one did that. Secondly, the second connection is a false equivalency fallacy, which are saying that, by the way, conservatives disagree with us on drag shows, but they also want violence, and they also take glee in violence. I'm like, no,
there's not
just because they disagree with you doesn't mean they want violence. See, this is what happens when you're in the lunatic left cult, which what you believe. And by the way, people who are in this cult are in an echo chamber. People are feeding them these things over and over and over, like by publications like this, by university groupthink, where you're surrounded by a million people who all believe and think and agree with everything. They just like nod their heads in agreement. Oh, yes. So you've never been told anything differently. What people believe is that conservatives, or the people who oppose them, they hate you, that they're afraid of you, and that they can't formulate a coherent sound, and that everything that they say is violence. Because remember, what is one of the best ways to instill fear in a cult membership? You have to convince them that what the people are saying against you is violence, and it wants to incite others to be violent against you. What better way to make them afraid of you, and thus encourage them not to listen to you at all? Because remember, if you're in a cult, the best way to keep you in that cult is to completely shut you off from the outside world, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to kept in there, because their lives are so fragile and so easily disproven that they have to keep you completely isolated from anyone who could show you the difference.
Yep.
Right. And so this is what the left is now pushing, is that they're taking a tragedy without any proof, trying to claim, oh, you see, this is what they wanted, and this is the natural outcome of their kind of talk. I'm like, this is basically gaslighting 101.
Yep, it is definitely.
And of course, the view is
and
Exhibit A.
It wouldn't be a gaslighting 101 without the view getting involved.
Oh boy!
So enjoy. This is just not going to be entertaining in any way.
No way.
And someone came to that place.
And that's what's so sad. And I don't know that they hide behind religion, because I said this on this show once before. Jesus would be the Grand Marshal at the Pride Parade.
I don't mean about people. I mean in every argument we have.
But
we weaponize religion.
Here's my question.
But it's wrong.
If you're so afraid, why are you going over there?
Yeah.
If they scare you so much, leave them alone.
No. No. These are two of the big. I don't know if you want to talk about this first, Stephen, or you want me to go into her.
Well, you go ahead.
Okay. So this is why I can't stand The View. The View is the best example of an echo chamber. The best example I've ever heard. Whenever they have somebody in there who's an actual conservative, a legitimate conservative, all they can do is scream over them. They scream at them. They try to scream over them. They don't let them talk, because they can't allow you to have a voice. Only their voice is logical. But then on top of that, the big problem here is like they say outrageous things like they do, and nobody objects. It was like, oh yes, cluck 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 cluck, yes, cluck 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 cluck, like they're like just trained hens. When she said that Jesus would be the Grand Marshal of the Grand Parade, this is basically a complete expansion of the idea that, like, people used, they took the phrase Jesus would bake the gay cake, and they expanded it to Jesus would be the Grand Marshal. What this is a talking point from the left that is expanded out of control. It basically says Jesus ate with the sinners, and he associated with the tax collectors or prostitutes. This is where they get this idea. They take a tiny little thing in the Gospels where Jesus ate with the tax collectors and the marginalized, and they take this and they shove it to such prominence, because they read that and they imagine it to mean that Jesus Jesus ate with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. Thus, Jesus approved that he cheered on their tax collecting and cheered on the prostitution, and he would have been the biggest advocates for the tax collecting and for the prostitution and all this kind of stuff. What these people are is that they're blatant liars, and the people who listen to them have bought these talking points so much that they actually believe that they're true, to the point where any Christian worth their salt would be able to debunk these nonsensical phrases in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
they're so brutal.
The arguments that so many of these people use are so childlike.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, like you go after homosexual people, but you still wear clothes made of different threads, and I'm like, yeah. I'm like, do you understand what the old versus the new covenant is? And they're like, I understand what a hypocrite is, and I'm like,
do you now?
Okay. There's no point debating theology with you because you have the understanding of a toddler. Because you've basically read what you want to read, and anything else you've thrown out the window. Because the old and new covenant is quite clear on these things. And of course, homosexuality is not mentioned once or twice. It's mentioned many, many times in Scripture. Whereas you don't find that so much about having cloths of different threads. Yep.
Yeah, the left is really good at finding loopholes. And what they do, and by the way, this is anybody who does apologetics with any kind of like regularity, you know that this is what they do on every topic. When it comes to evolution, people will find all sorts of loophole passages in the Bible that supposedly support evolution. People will find a loophole passages in the Bible about abortion. My favorite is Numbers 5, where they find this very odd little thing where it talks about like a woman. The whole focus is on a woman caught in adultery, but they focus in on this one little part that talks about what the outcome of her of this ceremony will be, which like they think it means is like that the ceremony is an abortion.
No.
And I'm like, no, because it doesn't say that it automatically leads to abortion. It says it may lead to, and there's not even any clarity that what happens is that a child dies in her womb. All it means that her thigh will
swell and fall away.
What does that mean? There's a lot of debate about that. It's not even clear.
And
but
it's
again,
only really the NIV that says her womb will miscarry, and it's like, that's a bit of an exaggeration considering no other translation says that.
Yes, exactly. And the NIV is notorious for having some really bad mistranslations and all things. But anyways, the point being, when she says with such force that Jesus would be at the head of the Pride Parade, this is a lady who has I'm not even going to say virtually. This is a lady who probably has absolutely zero actual knowledge of the Bible. I guarantee you, this lady has probably never even read a full chapter or a full book anywhere in the Bible. And yet she has the gall to go on live television and proclaim that she has figured out Jesus and she knows Jesus better than people who follow Christ.
Yep.
This is like the arrogance of these people. Like, she is an arrogant twat who doesn't know anything about the Bible, and she's going on there and just like talking like she knows everything.
Yeah.
And then you have Whoopi Goldberg who goes on and says like, why are they so afraid? If you don't like it, then just stay home.
Just stay home. Don't go.
No, because what she's saying is you have to accept that we are going to take over everything.
Yeah.
And you're better. You just need to stay in your home and just let us basically run amok over your entire society.
Yeah.
This is the kind of like idea, because remember what the left wants and these lunatics want is they want you to be silent so that they can basically get away with whatever they want
quietly
without any opposition.
Yep.
They want you to stop opposing them so that they can get whatever they want.
Well, and they claim that any opposition from you is an act of violence or an active promotion of violence.
Yes.
When in reality, if you look at what these creeps and pedophiles and drag performers want, like, this is something which we just found out about today. There's an article from Fox News talking about the origin of Drag Queen Story Hour. Mm-hmm. So the key figure in this transition was a genderqueer college professor and drag queen.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yep.
Before you read this part, I know it's going to be a little off-putting. Can you actually just show the title of the
yes, of course,
of the article and then go back to the thing, just so people can
the
find
title
it when they...
from Fox News: Drag Queen Story Hour's radical origins and the subversive sexualization of our kids.
Yeah, so this was like little under a month ago, October 29th.
Yep.
I didn't even hear about this until it was brought up by Matt Walsh on the show, and this is so much more helpful and so massively like important in understanding what this is. Drag Queen Story Hour is not an organic movement. This was a planned and strategic plan of attack by these people. Nothing that they do is organic, by the way. I want to basically point this out. Everything that they've done from the beginning to the end, nothing has been by chance. They planned everything.
Everything's been deliberate.
Like I remember we've mentioned this before. The entire takeover by the gay lobby, remember the gay agenda, that whole conspiracy theory thing. There's a book that exists that lays it out in graphic detail. After the ball, I forget who the authors were, but that one demonstrated and proved with absolute certainty that this was a concerted, planned strategy of how to make sure that America would accept the gay agenda and the gay the entire LGBT message.
Yep.
And they had it all planned out. And then this is only an expansion of that.
This is an expansion, and this is more of an elaboration. So the key figure in this transition was a genderqueer college professor and drag queen named Harris Kornstein, stage name Little Miss Hot Mess, who hosted some of the original readings in public libraries and sits on the board of Drag Queen Story Hour, the nonprofit organization founded by Michelle T. in 2015 to promote children's drag performances. Kornstein also co-wrote the manifesto for the movement, Drag Pedagogy, the playful practice of queer imagination in early childhood. With Harper Keenan. They proposed drag pedagogy as a new teaching method designed to stimulate the queer imagination, teaching kids how to live queerly. Though Drag Queen Story Hour events are often billed as family-friendly, quote-unquote, Kornstein and Keenan explained this is a form of code. Here, Drag Queen Story Hour is family-friendly in the sense of family as an old square queer code to identify and connect with other queers on the street. That is, the goal is not to reinforce the biological family, but to facilitate the child's transition into the ideological family. The organizers of this understand they must manage their public image to continue enjoying access to public libraries and public schools. They have learned how to speak in code to NGOs and to appease the anxieties of parents while subtly promoting the ideology of queer theory to children.
Yeah. So let me unpack that for those who are trying to make sense, head nor tails of that entire statement. What they basically admitted, and these are the architects. Remember, do you remember, Stephen, when you watch the Matrix, the trilogy, the second movie?
Yep.
And Neo finally gets down to the architect, and you realize that the architect. I know it's the terrible
the joke of the film.
The joke of the film. But basically, the concept is the architect was behind it all. He's the one that planned it all. He's the original mastermind behind the thing. These people these two people are the masterminds. They're the architects behind this entire idea. Okay, the Drag Queen Story Hour did not start spontaneously, like organically or something like that. It's a planned. Think about they think that we're in a war, and in a war you have strategic battle plans. So I remember I used to study World War II history. When I studied that, I know what the Battle of the Bulge was. The Battle of the Bulge was not just not like the Germans were oh, let's just throw a whole bunch of troops here and just hope for the best.
That
they had
win.
Yeah, they had a strategy, and it was actually a viable strategy. They were hoping to divide the Allied forces at a time when their supply chains were weak, hoping to drive through until they got to a certain port, and they were hoping that by dividing the Allied forces, they could essentially create I remember like there's a whole strategy to it. But you look at it, you're like, okay, maybe they overestimated their abilities, but it was not a just totally out of left field idea. They had a strategy to it. The Drag Queen Story Hour has the same idea, the same MO. They have a goal. Their goal is they want to turn society, and they want society to accept like LGBT everything, and they want to make it okay. So first of all, it's societal acceptance. The second is they want to make it okay for LGBT indoctrination of children, and particularly in schools. And these are two goals that can be achieved by Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yep.
They dressed it up in a very, very innocent sounding thing. It's like, oh, we're going to read like, very innocent books to children. Well, one of the things they don't tell you is that they read like LGBT friendly books to children. They don't read Dr. Seuss. They read like LGBT books and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But more importantly, to unpack this, what they admitted is that first, two things that they admitted. One is that the goal of these Drag Queen Story Hours is to stimulate the queer imagination of children, to teach children how to live queerly. In other words, this is grooming. That is by definition grooming. Second, when they say family friendly, because we've mocked the concept of family friendly before. We showed a parent at a very prominent, I think a public hearing or whatever. She mocked the concept of family friendly. She was like, "This doesn't make it, like you put family friendly on anything. It sounds great." That's because they admitted that family friendly is code for queer friendly. In other words, LGBT.
Ideological family.
Yes, the ideal. In other words, they want children to completely embrace the LGBT community so that they're more easily taken in by the LGBT. This is intentionally predatory, totally predatory in nature. And it is absolutely, it's so obvious by the fact that the very people who created and who run the home base for this entire strategy have admitted that that's their goal. Like, you could take this and show it to people and be, by the way, did you know that the authors, the two men who created this entire initiative have admitted that they not only do they want to indoctrinate children into being queer, but that they intentionally want to incorporate children into the LGBT community, and that they use Drag Queen Story Hours to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Suddenly people will be like, "Oh, I thought this was just about inclusion and being friendly to people." I'm like, "No. It's an intentional, it's predatory." You can tell people that. So again, just to kind of put a big close to the whole thing, this is what they do. They throw people, they put these people in there, they plan for the opposition, they paint the opposition as mean and selfish and totally they're jerks, and then they paint themselves as victims, and then they do it all over again. This is war. They're literally like predator. They're like wolves going to each school, each library, and literally preying on children. It's quite sad and quite heartbreaking what they're doing in plain sight.
Yep.
But it's catching on.
And of course, we could talk about this stuff for a very, very long time.
Yeah, sorry.
But we do need to move on. Thank you, Danny. It was very insightful and informative. And I agree with pretty much everything that you said there.
Cool.
That it's just to brainwash kids. Family friendly is totally a joke at these events. And like I've said to so many people, they're inherently sexual. They're basically burlesque shows that are hidden as family friendly so that they can indoctrinate kids and sexualize them from very, very young ages.
Yeah.